Okay, welcome into the shop, everyone. Now, it is the last day of 2024, and I thought what better to do with this day than to share this space with y'all, give y'all a shop tour. It's been 4 years since I recorded a tour on this channel, and I had a lot less gray hair back then. Also, oddly, I was just watching that video, filmed that entire video in shorts, which is interesting. And I had just way different equipment, a lot less equipment. So it's time for an updated shop tour. We're getting an early start, by the way. It's when the sun hasn't even popped up yet. It's not even day rise. I like to get started early, especially during the holidays, because I have 3 kids, and if I can get in 2 hours before, 3 hours before they even wake up, that's 3 hours I can usually fit in hanging out with them during the day. So that's a little side there. I'm just an early rise. I like to get started early. Couple things I want to hit before we start the tour. One is, if I'm talking kind of weird, it looks like I got punched in the face, it's because we are in the dead middle of cedar season in Texas. I'm located here in the outside of San Antonio, and I'm one of the lucky few that is highly allergic to cedar pollen. So it makes my eyes kind of baggy and just stops me up. It's not a lot of fun. It's my least favorite time of the year, but we're going to push through it. The other thing is, I have a bit of a mental challenge with organization. I get a little bit weird about it because I'm not by nature an organized person in any form, and I wish I was. And so when I came in this morning, I was like, I need to spend half the day cleaning to get ready for this video. And then I started doing that. I was like, what's the point of this? This is a lot of work. This is a wood shop. I swept up the floors for you guys. I feel like I have to preface the video with that to prepare you guys. It's not the cleanest shop. It's just what it is. I spend every day in this shop pretty much working. It's on my property. My house is about 20 yards that way, so I have an amazing commute. I wouldn't change anything. This is an amazing setup, and like I said, I'm very blessed to have it. So let's do I just want to do a really quick walkthrough of the shop, and then I'll just start showing you stuff. Basically what we're in right now is my bench room. I call it a room. It's not a room. This is one big giant room, the shop, but I like to call it the bench room, the bench space. This is where all the fun stuff happens. I got 2 workbenches here and here, and then I got the hand tools. So generally this is where a lot of joinery is going on, fitting parts, just fun stuff like that. Behind us over here, I've got, as we walk this way, drill presses, mortiser, basketball hoop. In here is my veneer table. This is an amazing addition to the shop. Takes up a lot of space though. Occasionally long boards get stored here. And then I've got some sanding equipment that doesn't get used too often back in this corner. And this is the just absolutely worst corner of the shop, the lathe area. One thing to note right now, I've got 2 projects going. I've got a big cabinet job, which I don't normally do a lot of cabinets. So you can see that sitting here. This is part of it. Bunch of cabinets, and then behind us is more. And then I'm building 4 golf ball display cases, which I build those pretty regularly through the power of the internet. People order golf ball display cases for me. They're sitting back here on the veneer table if you can't see those. And as we head this direction, we get into the machine area of the shop, which is machines, big sander. I've got a desk space over here, finished equipment there. And then as you get further back to the back, more machines, CNC, and lumber storage. I think what I want to do for the tour is start at this end of the shop and work our way down here. So let's go check out my very unorganized lumber space. Okay, so I like to start back here because all the furniture obviously starts with lumber, and that's where we're at, is kind of the lumber plywood storage. And before we jump into that, we've got to share like this awesome entrance to the shop, the barn door. This is made out of cypress, a little bit dirty, but I love the divided lights in it. Lets in a lot of nice light, and it's just a big opening. This is 10 foot, I think, by 10. I don't really know, something like that. And I can easily bring in the equipment if I have a big piece of equipment like the CNC or the bandsaw, or if I have to bring in lumber. I mean, it's just easy delivery, back up a trailer. I can load all my cabinets. It's nice to have a big open door. And my son yesterday put this on there because he thinks this is the way you should open and close it, with a coat hanger. So that's a new addition to it from my 5-year-old. So yeah, everything starts with lumber. And so my lumber storage situation is basically, this is all just extra drop off. Needs a little bit of organization, as we already addressed that in the beginning of the video. And then this is Plywood, sheet goods. Usually, I don't usually have a lot of sheet goods in my shop, but for jig making and all that, it's nice to have just the extra kind of drop off pieces. And then full sheets are usually over here. I always get these cardboard from my lumber supplier, and it's nice to get. I like to hold on to the cardboard. I can use it for different stuff. But yeah, anything like if I'm building a piece of furniture and I get drop off from it, that anything under 4 feet, I'll usually slide into these bins and just keep it in here for use whenever I might need it. I can't get rid of lumber. I have a bit of a hoarding problem, which I feel like most furniture makers are the same, but I've got way too much lumber. It's hard to say no. I've got some slabs just sitting around randomly, some really nice walnut that came from the East Coast, left over from the topo table I built recently. I built some cabinets with that. I've got some plans for this board. This is a nice wide 6/4 board. And then everything, the racks back here, I've got custom racks built up here. And these, usually, I've got veneer up top, all my extra veneers. But usually these two are actually holding lumber that's for a job. So like the cabinet job, if you were in here, if we did this tour 4 weeks ago, this would have been filled up with white oak, because that's a rift white oak was the wood for that job. And I've already gone through all of it and made the cabinets. So right now it doesn't have anything in it because I'm kind of in between jobs. So it's just kind of got some random boards. But when I order a new run of lumber for some tables I'm about to make, I'll probably stash quite a bit of it up there. And then whatever I'm going to get to super fast, I'll just put on the floor and try to find a convenient place to put it on the floor so I can sort it. And also, this might be a great time to share that if you go over to my Patreon, this stuff here you have the opportunity to buy this. So I've got a box right here that has lumber packed up. You can go to you'll get a link if you support the channel that way, and you pay for shipping, and I'll ship it to you. I've got a lot of cool stuff in here that I'll pick out occasionally, put it in a box, and the patrons can jump in and get free lumber, basically pay for the shipping. This shelving back here, this is just a catch-all. I've got a bunch of old YouTube projects in here. This is the old Egyptian lock I made. I don't know why these hang out back here, but that's pretty cool. I made a YouTube video of that. A lot of these things were made back in the days when YouTube really liked me a lot, like the Bowie knife. This one got a lot of views. This little mallet I made out of my Christmas tree. I used to do the craziest videos. So let me move to this corner back here, start with the CNC, and then we'll go to my favorite machine, the old Oliver. Okay, moving on to the opposite corner of the shop. We've got another big door here, roll-up door. This goes to the back of my property. All the sawdust that comes out of the dust collector, there's a giant pile of sawdust back there. It's just been collecting over the years, and a lot of it's composted down and broken down. But that's usually what happens is I got a dolly. I'll bring this bin. This is a big gallon. I don't know, 55 gallon. I don't know how many gallons it is. Bring it out, dump it, bring it back. I've got the Oneida dust collector. This is a 5 horsepower. This is a big, heavy-duty dust collector. And the reason I have such a big dust collector is because of this machine here, which I'll show you here in a bit, the S4S. It requires a lot of CFM. And it's a great dust collector. It's got the HEPA filter, big filter on it. It's a bit of a pain when you have a wide belt sander to have that setup, the cyclone, because it clogs those filters. But if you just keep them clean, it'll run pretty efficiently. All the way in the back corner is 3-phase converter right here. Click it on my box. So, and then I've got the air compressor and more lumber kind of stashed back in here. And then this big aluminum frame goes with the CNC for flattening tabletops. So this is my 5x5 CNC. I got into the CNC world probably about 3 years ago with RockTech, which this is a total side story. But I guess I should share it because I did. There's a video of me installing and setting this CNC up because RockTech sent this to me free of charge right when COVID hit. Now, just to give you preface, now this story is going to go downhill. So let's just I'll let you know that this is a Chinese-made machine. Overall, not bad at all. I've learned a lot on this machine. It's definitely not a high caliber of build quality. As you start messing with it more and more, I realize that. Like I said, they did send it to me. That partnership went south. Basically, the owners in China decided they didn't like the exposure it was getting on my channel. I mean, I didn't think it was going to get great exposure to begin with, because it's just a lot of people can't relate to this level of equipment on YouTube, because this is professional level. I mean, it's brand new. This is a $25,000 machine. So I don't know. They didn't really, I guess they weren't getting the sales they wanted out of it, which doesn't surprise me. And so they asked for it back, and my response was like, yeah, I'm not really going to ship this thing back to you. It's very expensive for one. I'd have to get it in here, I had to rent a forklift. So I'd have to rent a forklift, get it out of my shop, package it. It just wasn't an option. So we had to settle on me buying the machine from them, which was an unfortunate hit to me, because I was not really expecting to have to drop the money on a CNC. We're here with the old Chinese Rock Tech, and it's working pretty good. I started off learning on hand tools. I did everything via hand tools when I first started my business, with a few machines sprinkled in. And I've kind of evolved into this digital world, and I think it's just just finding that balance between the automated machines, the digital design through Fusion 360 is amazing. I love Fusion 360. The digital automated workflow is super helpful. I probably will always have a CNC from here on out. And this down here is a slab for a table I'm going to make it from Burrow Claro Walnut. Really pretty stuff. I'll throw it up here and flatten it on the CNC. That is a lot of information about a CNC. Let's move on from the CNC to the Oliver. From something that is modern day to something that was built in 1925. This is probably my favorite machine in the shop. This cool thing about this machine is I can just take this door and lift it right off. And I don't think that this was the original door to this machine. I think the hardware, the hinges and the latch are original. I think someone at some point made this door. Okay, let's start with the history of this machine. This is a Oliver model number 35, serial number 29,250. Generally with Oliver, there's a company you can reach out to that will have the old documents from old machines. And I've got I've got 3 vintage machines in the shop, and the other 2, I have some really cool old information on. This particular one, they could not find the original purchase order. They do know that it was built in October of 1925 and shipped to LA. There was a big machine dealer in LA in the early 1900s that a lot of these vintage machines went through, and then some point somehow ended up here in Texas at Ed Friedrich. It has a tag on the back that has it inventoried for Ed Friedrich Incorporated. And I haven't done the research I should have done fully. I want to do more, but Ed Friedrich has been around since the late 1800s in San Antonio. I think they got their start building custom billiard tables. Weird, the company's been around a long time. At one point, this was their machine, and it ended up in Comfort, Texas, where I bought it off of a gentleman. I bought it off a gentleman about, gosh darn it, I don't remember, 4 or 5 years ago, and completely restored it on this YouTube channel as a playlist. It was a total rust bucket and in bad shape, and now it runs beautifully. So 36-inch diameter, that's the size of these cast iron wheels. I use it primarily for resawing. It resaws like a beast. I can get 16 inches, 16 and a half on this to resaw. To get that size, I do have to take this door off, and I have a big resaw table, and it cuts beautifully. If you have a really good blade on there, so I use a carbide tip. It's a Linux Woodmaster carbide tip, made in the USA. Really good bandsaw blade. Not cheap, but the carbides will last a long time. I replaced the blade. It's about a $350 blade. It's 18 feet, just over 18 feet long, and I probably go through 2 a year. I just generally try to keep this set up with the big blade so I can resaw. I can even rip if I need to take the live edge off of a big heavy board. You know, this is a 36 by 36 cast iron tabletop. It's really, really beefy and heavy. That's another thing I love about it. So I mean, it's just a workhorse of a machine. I've got it hooked up to a VFD. I'll crank it on here, and the VFD slowly ramps it up so that the motor is controlled by that VFD, and it just slowly ramps it. The better thing for that is when you turn it off without the VFD, the amount of inertia and energy in the wheels, it would spin for probably 5 minutes. So when I turn it off, the motor on there will slow it down and bring it to a stop. And I've got the motor. I've got a 7.5 horsepower ball door motor that I built had a buddy build a custom mount for. It mounts off to the side. So to get into kind of the weeds of this, the back of the machine, so we've got the 36-inch wheels. We've got the 7.5 horsepower motor. It runs on 1,725 RPM. And then we've got 2 pulleys that power. So obviously there's a pulley on the motor that runs a belt that runs to a pulley directly to this bottom wheel down here. This is going to determine the way you size your motor. Your pulley size is going to determine how much speed you get on your blade. Trust me, I didn't pull this off the top of my head. When I restored the machine, I went through all this and figured it out, but I couldn't remember. But I'm on Vintage Machinery's website. They actually have a calculator for this. So you can input your motor RPM, your motor pulley, your machine pulley, and your wheel diameter. And it'll give you the bandsaw surface feet per minute. And mine is at just over 5,000. So that blade is moving really fast. And that is a resaw speed. And that's what I wanted this machine for. Gosh, man, I just like to stand here and look in awe of how the American manufacturer used to make things. Solid, big cast iron pieces. They stamped them all with numbers. This machine's seen some modification over the years, but for the most part, this is the original machine from 1925. Still in great working shape. One last thing to show you. One of my favorite things is the table can tilt to 45, and I learned this the hard way. You got to get your insert out. I made a YouTube video on how to make this insert too. We'll put that here. And then it's got like a worm gear down here. Get a little workout in this morning. All right, there we go. So, and you might think, when does he ever do that? But I actually have done it several times. There's times when it can be very useful. And now it just looks even cooler because the table's tilted at 45. It's just like, I don't know. I love this machine. It's just so cool. Let's move on. Okay, so moving over to the side. I like to call it the side of the shop. You could call it the back. This is my S4S. That stands for Surface 4 Sides. Also could be called a molder. This is the kind of machine that you could run flooring in, run crown molding in. But I use it specifically for S4S. Now, as a one-man shop, the machine that makes me the most money. It will mill lumber very quickly. And so how it works, it would come through the machine. This bottom cutter would cut the bottom of the board. Then this side cutter would cut this side, straight line it. And then you've got a setting here with this that's going to set a cutter right here that slides this way. And that would set the width. So let's say I wanted to make this 5 inches wide. Set this to 5. This would cut down the 5. And then this last one planes the top of the board. And I set that dimension here. If I want it to be 1 inch thick, I set it to 1 inch, and it'll finish it off at 1 inch thick. And it does that all in one quick pass as I send it through. Now, for those of you who don't know a lot about processing lumber, to do that without this machine would require 1, 2, 3 machines. 3 different machines, 3 different steps. Now, that process in and of itself takes a lot more time, obviously, than this, but also those machines generally, a planer and a joiner are going to take small amount of material. This thing can take 3/8 on the scale, so it could take up to a 3/8 cut off the part. So you can really hog a lot of material off, and it goes quick. Started my business in 2000, right around 2011. and I started in my garage in a different house, then moved into a small, little bitty shop right off of the main street of my town, which was probably about half the size of this shop. And then I moved into this shop while we bought this property, built the shop. And at that time, this is before I started YouTube, I took out about it was $25,000 loan from my local bank to buy this, the saw stop, the dust collector, the sander, and compressor, and a few other things, a lathe. And so I'm giving you a lot of information. I think people like to hear that. The reason I'm telling you that is when I bought this, I paid $4,000 for it, and it, like I said, best $4,000 I've spent. It's a tricky machine to learn, but once you learn how to use it, it's so fast. And like the golf ball display cases that I've been working on, I can spit parts through here really quick, and it just saves a lot of time. I almost sold this machine too. A couple of years ago, I was really tight financial spot. It was right when I had to buy that CNC. I had an employee in the shop, and I just things were really tight, and I needed a little cash, and I almost sold it. I tried to sell it, couldn't get what I wanted for it, and I'm so thankful that it's still here. Because now that I'm back to the one-man shop, it's like having another employee in the shop. I should name it. I should give that thing a name. Next machine. Okay, so this is the 43-inch wide belt sander. This is just like the S4S, another machine that really pays for itself. It's just a time saver in this shop. Any part that goes into a piece of furniture is going to go through here and get sanded. Now, it's not going to finish sand anything. I usually got to come in with the orbital afterwards and get the surface finished to what I want. But this does a great job of getting everything calibrated to thickness, and it can flatten really well. It's 43-inch wide capacity. The belts I store back here on a rack, and I go through 60, 80, 120, and 150 grit. So the belts feed in on this side. Basically, it's a little bit tricky, but you kind of get, it's all tight too. Space in here, but so I slide right in. It's got a little clamp here that kind of secures the cutter head. Now this particular machine is a single head. You can get them up, I think you can get up to 4 heads. You can get them to where they have a planer head. Then it sands like an 80 grit or 60 grit, then an 80, then a 120. So you can get multiple heads where you can feed a part through, start at 80, finish at 220. And those machines are awesome, and they're also really big and expensive. So the machine turns on here, and it's got a really good digital scale. So I like this machine in the fact that it'll, like I said, it'll scale everything to thickness. So if I've got parts that I need to go to the CNC and it's kind of a production setting, I want everything to be the same thickness. So I can get this, right now it's set 2.285, so a little over a quarter of an inch. And I can really calibrate that and dial it in, and I can get it calibrated to the Wixie scale on my planer as well. So when I come off my planer, I can come here and they're calibrated and pretty accurate, the same. So it's a great machine, really good. It's got a few quirks, few issues. The switch is broken here, and the tracking for the belt down there needs some work. And then there's a head inside here, a drum that basically the sandpaper runs around, and that's where the sanding happens. It's the contact to the part. And that rubber drum has a little bit of a bad spot right here, kind of a hump. So if you send a tabletop through, it's going to leave a little bit of a hump right there that you have to scrape out or hand plane out. Again, small issue. So I mean, like the CNC, I priced out a new one of these, same size, single head from Felder, and gosh darn it, it was expensive. It was like $40,000. So I paid, when I originally got the loan to get this and this, I paid 10 for it. This is what we got. Works great, love it. Good machine. Let's move on to this section of the shop over here. Now you're pretty much directly in the center of my shop, looking back this way. I'm just going to group this space because it's not overly exciting. It's it's kind of the workhorse of machines here. The table saw, everyone knows what a table saw is. Back here is my brand new shaper. from Oliver Machinery. I'm not really going to hit on it a lot because I just shot an entire video on it, like 3 videos back, and on this crosscut sled on how I built it. So you can just head on over there and check that out. I've got the saw stop. Been really happy with it. I've got the crosscut sled. You know, it's got quirks. You've got to square that sled every time you use it, but it's nice for cross-cutting. I've worked this thing hard, and it's held up really well. It needs a little bit of a tune-up. It needs a whole new outfeed table. This is the one part of my shop that I wish I need to improve on is storage. And so when I built the shop, I had this grand vision of not bringing any machines in until I spent like 4 weeks just building cabinets all on the walls. But I was in the middle of my business at the time. And that was a really stressful period because I had kind of committed to this expensive shop. I had some help getting this shop, and there was a little bit of pressure involved, and the business was just, I'm like, is my business even worthy of this shop? You know, I don't know. It was just that was a stressful moment in time, and so I just felt like I couldn't stop and work on the shop. I just needed to get everything in here and start working and keep making money. So I never really got organization. So I want to build a bigger outfeed table with a bunch of cabinet storage, especially now that I have the shaper, because shapers come with a lot of tooling. So this outfeed table is an old outfeed table that needs to go out to the burn pile, and then I need to build a new one eventually. I think that should be a 2025 project. The planer, you'll see a lot of Oliver equipment in the shop, and if you follow the channel long enough, you know Oliver is pretty much a sponsor through free equipment, which is a really awesome deal. Very fortunate. They make great machines, and I've done several review videos, overviews of their machines, and I've had the planer and joiner in here for probably 3 years now. And you know, like I said, I just not long ago did an overview of these machines, and they're good. I like having them. Thankful to Oliver. Very blessed to have the opportunity to be able to have equipment like this at my disposal and have someone willing to trust me with them and share them with you guys. So this is the joiner. Really, this joiner was a game changer for me because originally I had the 12-inch jet combo machine. So it was 12 inches wide, joiner planer combo, which was really great because it saved on space. But it had a really short, I mean, the length of the bed of that joiner was probably this long, whereas this one's just over 100 inches, I think. So I can joint really long tabletop boards and get them nice and straight and ready for glue up pretty quick. So this machine has been one of my favorite things about this machine. I'll show real quick. It's got a pedal. So the pedal down here turns it off. Pretty cool. Great idea. I love that. Rack of clamps. As every woodworker will say you can never have enough clamps, and I could have more. My favorite are the I-beam ones right here, which I don't even think you can get anymore. Jorgensen. Those are great clamps. And then the parallel clamps are all there. This is my makeshift desk space. I've got basically, you know, everything you need desk-wise. I got my files in here, and then my laptop, do all my editing and design work on that, and then this just collect stuff. All my projects are pretty well documented. Let me grab one of these. I'm back. This is, it's called furniture order sheet. Basically, it just has info about the job I'm building. This is for the golf ball display cases. It's got the 4 I'm making, the client's name, and then I got the cut list on here. If you build custom furniture, even if you don't build custom furniture, if you're just building it for fun, I think it's a great idea to document your projects really well. Date them when you deliver them. I like to date them when I start them so I can see when I started, when I delivered, kind of that turnaround time. And then really another important thing to include is your finish. What finish did you use? A detailed write out of, you know, like the cabinets. I've got white oak sanded to 220 with general finishes stain, oil-based stain. And then on top of that, before I put clear coat on, I'll wipe it with 50/50 denatured alcohol water, clean it real well. Then I shoot it with a water-based finish from Target Coating. So it's just complicated. Sometimes finishes can be complicated. And if I install these cabinets and 8 years down the road, the client's like, man, the door, my kid messed up the door. I need you to refinish it. Well, it's really easy if I can just pull this order sheet and say, oh, there's the finish. Boom, I can do it. I don't know. I may run across a piece 20 years from now and I can pull up the cut list for it. So I think it's a great idea to keep good documentation of your work. That's going to clear us out for what I call the machine area. And let's head on over into my favorite part of the shop, bench area. We'll start over here with another old Oliver bandsaw. So standing next to the Oliver 192, this is an 18-inch bandsaw. This is kind of the little brother to the big one, the big 36-inch. That one was built in 1925. This one was built in 1926. So a little bit younger machine, not by much. And it's a really cool machine. Great machine. Just like the big one, I restored this one. I found it in Fredericksburg and bought it. And it took me a little while to get the restoration on this one done. I kind of started and then hit a wall and stopped for a while and picked it back up. The cool thing about this one is I didn't paint it. So it's pretty common that Oliver would have a kind of a green. In this one, I just stripped the paint off because it was like a yellow mustard color and it was all chipped and broken and faded. So I stripped it all off, which was a lot of work, and then I clear coated it. So it just has a clear coat over the raw metal, which I think looks pretty cool. The tensioning on the blade's not working great. I've got to get that figured out. I haven't quite got that dialed in. Other than that, though, it runs pretty good. It does leak pretty bad. It has a gearbox down here behind this wheel. So the motor drive comes in up here, and then it has gears in there, and that's what turns this wheel. And you can just kind of look in here and tell, like, it's very oily because this gearbox, you just kind of fill it with, it's like a oil bath. And once you turn it on, it just starts launching oil everywhere. I use it for small little stuff right here at the workbench. Just if I need to come over and cut a little part or cut curves, this saw usually always has a small blade. Right now it's got a 1/4-inch blade on it, and that way I can cut radius and curves. And the table in here is pretty big for an 18-inch saw, and it also, just like the other one, I believe it has the tilt to it just the same. Now, I do have the original purchase order on this machine, so this is pretty cool. This thing was purchased December the 11th, 1926, and it was purchased by Mr. H.W. Hartman, SUP, Ottawa Public Schools, Ottawa, Iowa, Board of Education, Ottawa, Iowa. So this one went to a school, which is kind of cool. So pretty cool, man. It's got a bunch of writing on it, some signatures. It's cool to see where this machine originally went to. I don't know how long it stayed at the school there in Ottawa. I know, like I said, I got it in Fredericksburg, so it's at some point got to Texas. I'm gonna crank it on real quick so y'all can see it run. Hear it run. Sounds pretty smooth. Not a lot of vibration. It's a solid piece of equipment, but it's a good saw. And I really love having it. It's nice to have right here by the workbench. So I'm giving you a wide field of view for this space because I kind of just want to include all this in one go. So I've got my original workbench. I got kind of two of the same workbenches, different lengths. A lot of people get really obsessive about workbenches, especially hand tool makers, about their vices and their hold down systems. I've just been running with this same bench. I built this out of my parents' garage when I was like 24. And that was in 2003, 2004. And it's just been good. It's a Paul Sellers design. He has plans for it. He builds it on his YouTube. I'm a big Paul Sellers fan. Also, the reason I got into woodworking was because of Paul Sellers, because I took classes. Actually, I was very fortunate. I was in Waco, Texas, where I went to school at Baylor University. And at the time, my dad and I were both kind of interested in this woodworking stuff. And there was a place outside of Waco called Homestead Heritage, where Paul Sellers actually taught woodworking classes alongside Frank Straza, another really amazing American furniture maker. And I had the opportunity to go take several classes with him at a young age in my early 20s. And those classes are what spurred me into becoming a furniture maker and eventually getting me to this point. And what I loved about that, and why I'm so thankful that I had that as my starting point in furniture making, was that you built everything by hand. It was all hand tools. Joinery was done by hand. I mean, when you went to these classes, you had a workbench exactly like this. All the parts were made for you, and you had a collection of hand tools, and you'd cut a mortise by hand, you would saw out the tenons and cut the dovetails by hand, and you learned how to do all that by hand. There was no machine work. So I'm grateful that I had that opportunity and that I had the impact of Paul Sellers on me at a young age. And that's why I built this bench, is right after I took classes with him, and it's just been my go-to bench. And I do sometimes wish that I had a little bit nicer workbench, and the fact that I could have a cool tail vise on it. All kinds of, they just, the workbenches nowadays are getting really nice. But I'm also kind of attached to this, and I've grown up through the years making furniture on this bench, and I'm not exactly easy on things. I talked a little bit earlier about how I'm kind of unorganized. I'm also pretty rough on stuff. So this workbench has seen a lot of use and abuse. It's got spills on it, stain on it. I mean, it's got glue on it. I clean the top off every so often, but I don't know, it fits me. It's a good workbench. Now, speaking of Paul Sellers, the first thing I ever built, first few things, was this pine shelf, which stores all of my adhesives, super glue, wood glue, oils, things that I might, oil my tools. I got wax up here, stuff like that. I built this out of pine in one of his classes, and then same thing with this little box here. And if you've ever watched Paul Sellers, he's got a bunch of these, because this is part of his kind of beginning woodworking class, is this little dovetail box, and mine's actually starting to kind of fall apart now over the years. It needs to be re-glued. So that was kind of a side run. On this workbench, I've got two work vices. I've got a small record vise here that I use quite a bit. It needs a little bit of love, a little bit of oil, and then I've got okay, so I got you repositioned. So this, I want to really share this. This is the Oliver Pattern Maker vise. I forget the specific name to it. It's been so long since I've got it, but these are pretty highly sought after. And I got this one not long ago, actually. But what I love about this vise, well, the first thing that's cool about it is it's Pattern Maker vise. So it can pivot up like this. And then what else can it do? Well, it's been a while since I've done this. You can pivot up, and then we got a lever here, and we can spin it like so. So you can get a lot of parts in there in different ways and clamp things in different ways. You can actually spin it all the way around and use these kind of vices over here. Now, I was really, when I bought this vise, I was really pumped to have this feature. And I'm going to be honest, since I put it on my workbench, I've probably used that 2 or 3 times. So it's not something I use often, but the usefulness of this vise comes in these 2 screws here. This has the ability to rack, so I can put tapered parts in here and clamp them down really well by adjusting these and allow it to be a tapered vise. And then also let me grab this. These things are super helpful. Like, you can pop these little dogs up, and you can clamp circles in this really easily. I can clamp when I'm working on this thing here. So this is a golf ball case I've been working on. I can drop it in here. Now I need another board here. I don't have one, but I can come in and just kind of lock this thing in here, and then I can even out with a hand plane these edges, flush them up, make sure everything's nice, and it's held in there really well. It's not moving. This vise is probably the one I use the most now that I have it. And then even the way it works too, it's kind of cool, is these 2 vices line up pretty close, not perfect. And so I can put a long board in on both vices and really lock in a long board if I've got an edge joint, a long board or something like that. So that is an overview of the workbench. We kind of move into this space. My wall space is where all my tools are. So I've given you the rundown on the shelf system, what it holds. I've got a while back, I had a separate YouTube channel called Have It Made, and Frank Strazzo hand carved this sign for us when we went out to his shop and filmed them. So I've got it hanging there. And then Jason Thigpen, a friend of mine who does a lot of leather work. He makes really cool aprons and other things. This is something he makes. It organizes a lot of my tools. This is a brand new tool I just got from a furniture maker here in Texas. His name's Clark Kellogg, and this thing's cool. So you can slide this stainless steel rod up and down like so, and then you twist this and it locks it. I was looking at this and I wanted to measure. You could put that in there, close it down, lock it, and then scale it with a ruler or calipers or something of that nature. Very, very useful little tool. Cool to have. It's fun to support makers as well. Clark Kellogg's well beyond my abilities. Super talented furniture maker. And just to have his tool in my shop is kind of cool. Spoke shaves are here. I always use Boggs shaves. If you didn't know, I was fortunate to do an apprenticeship with Brian Boggs in my early days. Very brief. It was for a summer, and then I went back the following summer and just got to hang out in his shop and learn a lot from a very talented furniture maker. All my hand planes. This is the original hand plane till I built when I first started making furniture. Based it off of one of Brian Boggs he had in his shop. So it can hold chisels on the bottom, small planes here on this little shelf, and then all my bigger planes lean up here, ready to go. All these planes I use pretty regularly. The one I use the least is probably the scrub plane. Occasionally I'll bust it out. I haven't used my low angle jack in a long time because I actually sharpened the blade so short that it doesn't work. So I've been meaning to get me another one. I recently got, my wife got me this 4.5. 4.5 is my favorite hand plane. That's my favorite size. My wife got me this Lee Nielsen a few years ago. So that's taken the place of my original old 4.5 that I used a lot, Stanley. I got this when I first started making furniture and put a better blade in it, a little harder steel. And then this big one came from a good friend of mine, Weldon Lister. This is number 8. I did videos on other craftsmen. It didn't really work out, but it was fun. And I did one on Weldon. He's actually an engraver. So he engraved a really cool plaque on the big bandsaw. And he just hand does it. He's old school. So it's a hammer and chisel. And he sits here and he just kind of shapes these scroll patterns in guns. And it's really cool. And so his dad was Big Bill Lister, who played with Hank Williams back in the days. And his dad was a gun engraver as well. And his dad was also good friends with Hank's son, Hank Williams Jr. There's a big backstory to that. And the reason I'm telling you all that is because Weldon gifted this to me because he didn't have a use for it, but it was his dad. So I call this one Big Bill after Big Bill Lister. And I'm thankful for Weldon, and he's a good friend, and I respect him a lot. Very talented craftsman. So moving over here, this little dude here. It's funny. I have 2 nice workbenches, and then this rolling cart is kind of my bench now. I've been gluing up these doors right here for the golf ball cases. It's a cool joint, by the way. I could show you this real quick. So anytime you have a case, here's one that's glued up. You can see that door is not very fit. It's not very wide frame because it's all glass. You want to display those golf balls, but you want to have a good joint because it's such a small frame that you have to have a really strong connection here to make a good quality door that's not going to break. So this is the connection we use. It's kind of like a bridle joint that has offset shoulders. Hopefully you can see this, and they kind of go together like so. So it's a full through kind of mortise and tenon look with those offset shoulders. And the reason they're offset is because when you bring it together and you flip it around, look at it that way, you've got the rabbet for your glass to drop into, and then you just add glass stop. So quality stuff. Okay, so I moved you over a little bit better angle. So this is my Felder adjustable table. This is nice. So you can actually crank on this and get it. I mean, you can get it to any height you need, up to, I don't know, to there, which, what is that? That is 41 inches, and it'll hold up to 600 pounds on it. And then you can drop it down really low, close to the floor. So it's really helpful for a one-man shop because I can load heavy things on it, lift them. When I'm running things through the wide belt sander, this is really useful, especially big tabletops, because I can roll it around, catch the outfeed, roll it back to the front, and adjust that height to dial it right where I need it. So this has been probably one of my more favorite purchases, although it's not cheap because Felder is not the cheapest product you can get, but it's really well made. Second workbench over here. This is the same Paul Sellers, shorter size. I actually built this one for my dad years ago, and he used it for a long time. But like many things that my dad owned, they ended up here. And now for him to use them, he comes here, which is awesome because he actually helps me quite a bit in the shop. I usually get 2 or 3 days a week of him out here helping me do stuff, which is awesome. Sometimes we have 3 generations in this shop. I have my dad, me, and my kids running around in here. So, gosh, when I say that, I just realize how fortunate and blessed I am to have that set up. Very thankful for that. This is just a rolling tool cart. This is kind of holds everything I need in the bench area to operate. So top drawer is going to have layout tools, combination square, dividers. I've got calipers, tape measures, stuff of that nature. Second drawer is going to hold all my sharpening gear, diamond stones, ceramic stones, everything I need to sharpen the tools. And then third one down is going to have most of my drill stuff, so drill bits, drivers, all kinds of stuff like that. Anything, countersinks, anything I need for a drill. And then I've got kind of a random drawer here with some mallets and Festool tooling for the domino, wrenches, things that I need for routers. And then this oversized drawer here is all router bits. It's full of router bits. And I've got a little palm router that usually hangs out in here, but it's floating around somewhere. And then the very bottom holds my bigger routers. I got 2. I got DeWalt and Makita in there. Moving on over here, we've got the grinder for grinding blades. It used to hang out on here. Kind of got an odd spot here, and I moved it over here because I didn't have anywhere else to put it. This kind of got overtaken by more tool storage, which I'll get into in a second. The sawtill, this YouTube video, I made this on YouTube. I sell the plans for that, and I've got all my hand saws in here. And then we've got sandpaper all in here. And then this is just a storage cabinet I made years ago that just holds all kinds of random stuff. I never put any pulls on it. I just use screws because it's how I operate. But it's just made out of alder, and it's got a bunch of hardware. For a long time in my shop, I didn't have any good hardware storage, and as furniture makers and as someone who just owns a shop, you should collect and really store well all of your fasteners, screws, washers, bolts, all that stuff. So I recently broke down and bought this from Uline, and this is really nice. It just pulls out. You've got inside, you can actually take these with you. I take them on installs sometimes, but each one has a bunch of trays and bins, and you can store a lot of stuff in these. I've got hardware down here. I've got construction screws. Actually, I had my dad go through and set all this up and label and organize everything real nice. He did a good job. These are my other tool chests. Again, Paul Sellers. These are his designs, and he has a bunch of these in his shop. These hold just kind of random stuff. A lot of tools I don't use as often. I've got some marking gauges in here, bevels in there, old wooden plane, a cabinet scraper. I don't use as often, but occasionally I'm in these and grabbing some hand tools if I'm really getting into it. Router plane. I got another router plane up here. This one had some paint spill on it. I need to clean it up. So, and then I carry in here just all kinds of random stuff. Power tools, any kind of screwdrivers. I got a random drawer just full of drill bits, and then all kinds of stuff in there. Just stuff you need to run a shop. Okay, so before we leave kind of this space of the shop and head over here, I want to share this piece real quick. So I have gotten kind of into this mode of wanting to get into furniture restoration and conservation. It's something that really interests me. I think it'd be a lot of fun. The thing I think that interests me the most about it is seeing how old pieces that have lasted 100+ years, how they were made, what the craftsman did, the joinery, how the drawers were made, just all those aspects to me are very intriguing to compare that to how we work in a modern shop in the modern day as craftsmen. So I'm going to be kind of starting up this new series in 2025 where we restore some pieces, and this is going to be the first one right here. And I have personally probably 3 pieces that are worthy of restoration that are really cool old pieces. This being one of them, this old blanket chest with hand-cut dovetails. It's got some issues with it, and it's been in my house. My wife and I bought this when we first got married, and it's just kind of been the storage in my kids' room, and it's got no hinges on the lid, and they've really beat it up. It's got the hardware's all destroyed. So It's missing trim. So I'm going to get in. The next video probably is going to be the full restoration of this, which I'm really excited about. So that's kind of a sneak peek of what's going to happen with that. Let's move on to kind of this part of the shop behind the camera here. Okay, so kind of have to bear with me because, like I said in the earlier in the video, we've got cabinets in here and the golf ball cases. But as you transition out of this kind of bench space, this is just a giant table, 10 foot by 4 foot veneering surface. So any kind of large veneer work I need to do, this is what I do it on. And this was built 2 or 3 years ago. This was a pretty big project. It's basically 2 tables put together with, you can slide storage underneath this, and then we've got adjustable hardware on the feet, so I can really dial in the flatness. This is the flattest surface in the Sharp that's not a machine. Like for instance, right in front of me, this is the door to one of these golf ball cases. I will glue this usually on the veneer table where I have a nice flat surface, because these doors are really tricky to build. I was talking a little bit earlier about them, but if you get any twist in these, they will not close well. So this one's really good. This one's really good. This one I'm actually going to have to rebuild because it's so twisted. It will not, it just won't work well. It'll feel bad when you go to close it against the wall. It's going to have this, it's going to touch up there. And right now this thing's got like a 1/2 inch gap. So somewhere along the lines when I glued this one up, I didn't get it in the clamps well. I didn't get it flat on the bars. So it is a bit of a kind of a nuisance because it's a huge space taker, but it also creates a nice work surface. My old veneer system from, when I did the last shop tour, I would basically have to set it up on the floor. I had to build up a platform, level it out, and then put a bag on that platform. It was a lot of work, and it took just too much effort. And I enjoy veneering. It's something I do a lot in my project. So having a good setup to veneer is good. I'm thinking about actually, because this is on kind of gas pistons here that keep it from dropping down real hard, and it allows you to easily lift it. But I'm thinking about taking the hinges off in those little pistons and then just maybe putting it on a lift system so I can drop this thing down. I could raise it all the way up, get it out of the way, and I just have a table I could go around, because right now this thing sitting up like this is blocking the airflow of my AC and heater. So, everything just kind of stops there and stays in this corner of the shop. There is an option to keep it down and build a table on top of it. And I actually kind of started with that, and I didn't really like it. So I'm kind of kicking around the idea of being able to hoist it up and hold it up to the roof. Behind me, let's talk about these 2 machines. We've got the mortiser and the drill press. This is Oliver drill press. Every workshop needs a drill press for drilling holes or whatnot. I like to keep my drill press. It's kind of like that little bandsaw, the old Oliver. I like to keep that and a drill press in my bench area, because they're machines that generally you're going to when you're in the process of doing joinery or doing stuff on the workbench. It's not really something that's being used to machine wood, dress wood to cut it down to size. So nothing really fancy about this. It's just a drill press, and it's been a good drill press. Okay, so the mortiser is a really cool machine. This is an Oliver 191D. I've got the paperwork right here. I'm going to share with you in a second. This one is a little bit newer than the other 2 Olivers. Those were 1920, mid-20s. This is the late 1950s. This is an incredibly useful machine for cutting mortises, which I do a lot of mortise work in my furniture, and this will make quick work of a mortise. If you don't know a lot about a mortiser, you basically got a auger bit inside of a chisel right here. So you're drilling a hole, and at the same time you got a chisel around that drill bit that's taking out those corners, and it's making a square hole. And basically you use this pedal. This is the clamp right here. And this pedal is what pushes it down through the wood. And so I'll make a hole, and then I've got a lateral movement here on my table, and I can just move over, make the next hole, move over, make the next hole. And fairly quickly you can cut really nice mortises on this. It's also got front to back movement right here. And then you can tilt this whole table angled if you need to do some angle work. When I first started using this, I was having a lot of issue with the tooling heating up and burning really bad. And I ended up putting a VFD on it so I could control the speed and kind of dial in. And that's helped a lot, being able to kind of figure out different wood species, hardness of woods, different size bits, different types of bits. All those are play factor in how it creates heat when you cut. So I've been playing around with it, and I'm kind of starting to figure it out. But it's a great machine, and I'm really thankful to have it. I did restore this again. This has got a playlist on my YouTube. I restored this probably 4 or 5 years ago. Full restoration. I took the whole thing apart, which this is a pretty complicated machine. It's got some heavy duty springs inside the body here that are what allow you to move this big motor up and down with ease. Okay, so this machine was purchased in December the 23rd of 1957. It was sold to the Independent School District of Des Moines, Iowa. Probably not saying that well. Board of Education, Furniture Factory, 13th place in Forest, Des Moines, Iowa. It's got some cool signatures on it. This is the description in the invoice. It says Oliver 191D hollow chisel mortiser, complete regular 3-phase 60 cycle 208 volts. The extra feature was a tilting table in place of the plain table. So some really cool history to this machine. Obviously a keeper, wouldn't want that one to get lost or sold ever. So, out of all the equipment I have in the shop, my favorite's obviously going to be the old equipment that I've restored because it's just so cool. The cast iron, we've been through that. The sanding, let's jump over to the sand equipment that I rarely use. It's not in great shape. The Sandrite sander, pump up sander. This is actually a really cool sought after sander that I just don't use that often. I do occasionally find there was a point in my career where I carved a lot of spoons, and I made some money for the holidays for that. And I used to use this to sand the spoon some. But I've considered selling this machine. It's got a brush head on it like this. This is actually really cool. So it's got like horsehair behind the abrasives, and it'll follow basically any contour, and it'll sand it really well. You can put different grit paper in here. So that's a nice head. I actually have a lot. I have a fat drum head here, which is like a, 6-incher. This is a 4 or 3. It's like a little 2-incher right here. And I have paper for all of them. Like I said, I don't know. I don't find a lot of use for it. And it's very specific to sanding contours. So behind that, I've got the big 14-inch Yates sander. I wouldn't say big. There's a much bigger ones out there, but this one's kind of a nuisance. I think it's a cool machine. I got really, I bought this from an old German guy, and I probably paid way too much. I just got really, I know Yates is great American-made equipment from back in the days, and I just saw it. It was like he was selling his whole shop, and paid $1,000 for it, and I pretty sure overpaid for that. It's got a few issues. It definitely has some vibration, some wobble. It needs some work, and I just haven't had the desire to put any work into it. For what it is, I can use it, and it's cool features. It's got some tilting to the head here, so I can angle this. This whole head will move. This is another one that I like the machine, but it's also probably might part ways with it. I don't know. These two back here, I've been in the talks too with Oliver about adding an edge sander. So if that does come through, these probably are both going to go, and the edge sander will come in and take up the space. So this is a space of the shop when we get back in here that I don't use a whole lot. I got my lathe back here. I'm not going to share this space right now because it's just kind of a catch-all of junk. I've got to come back here and spend a day organizing this, cleaning it, and getting it all taken care of. So one last piece of equipment I want to share with you that I didn't share, that I kind of skipped over, and it's a fairly new addition, and that is probably going to end the tour. Okay, so looking directly up above me, you can see that kind of filter. That is a Blue Ox air cleaner that I recently added to the shop. It's pretty awesome. So it'll refresh the air in my shop 10 times in an hour. So if I'm running the wide belt, doing a bunch of sanding, I've had some issues in the last couple of years with my lungs. I'll be laying in bed at night just wheezing and coughing and making horrible sounding noises that can't be good for me. And I know it's from inhaling dust, because there's just nothing you can do in a wood shop to completely eliminate all that. Honestly, I probably need to do a better job of wearing a mask. I do try to put a mask on when I'm working in a lot of dust, but I'm not great at it. And that's why I purchased this. This is not a cheap purchase. It's a hard purchase because it doesn't add anything to the production of my furniture. It just is to protect me and help my shop be a nicer space to work in. This thing's cool. I think if you're a woodworker and you're like me, I mean, this thing will tell me the particle matter. Dude, I don't know the terminology. It says PM 2.5. That's something. It just tells me if it's good or bad. I don't know. I don't know the science behind any of it. At one point I did read into it and I lost it all. It also tells me about things like this says unhealthy right now. So this is I think formaldehyde, not formaldehyde. This is some kind of chemical and it comes off from the finishes. And the reason it's showing unhealthy is because right before I shot this video, I sprayed 8 cabinet doors for this, and they're sitting in the back of my shop drying. And just the gas coming off of those is creating unhealthy hair. And I can't even smell it. My smellers, I've lost the ability to smell well. So, I mean, this is why this is so good, because now I'm really not, I shouldn't be breathing the air I'm breathing right now. As far as the dust, though, the dust is good. And this is another dust measurement, and this is good. But this is, the fumes in the shop are kind of creating a little bit of an unhealthy environment. So, I don't know. That's a little something rabbit hole I went down trying to protect myself, protect my lungs. I think it's important. If you're going to spend a career in a wood shop, you probably ought to take care of your lungs. You should take care of everything. You definitely need eyes, ears. Eventually we're all going to lose our hearing, but it'll go much faster if you don't wear hearing protection. That's one thing I wear a lot of, and lungs. So, okay, so that is going to close it down. I hope you've enjoyed this. This is kind of a view into my world, what I do. Like I said, I spend every day in this shop working, and often it becomes, when you have a business doing this, it becomes really difficult to find time to create a space that's really pleasant, that's organized, that's productive. It's always an ongoing process, and it's just, you got to force that time, once every couple of months to sit down and really work on your space. I try to do the best I can. Like I said, I'm not the most organized person, but I feel like for what I have here, we've done a pretty good job of making this into a pretty stellar wood shop, and I, for one, am very blessed and thankful to have it. A lot of people made sacrifices for me to be able to be here, including my amazing wife who supports me. So I just got to give thanks. And then also I get my kids right here, so they get to come over and see what I do and experience it, which I don't know if you can ask for much more than that. It's just a huge blessing. And also, you guys, thank you so much for giving me the audience. I love sharing these videos with y'all. It's really cool, and I love getting your feedback. So if you have any comments, I do read those. If you have any suggestions, if you've seen something in here that you think I could do better, I'd love to hear that as well. So that's always super helpful. I'm very excited about this year. I'm excited about the projects I've got on the books. I'm excited about potentials of new things coming in the shop, and then even this space out here, possibly finally pulling the trigger on creating something out here. I mean, if I'm being honest with myself, this needs to be a finishing room, finishing space, but I really want to make it into a cool office. So I'm kind of just fighting that battle in my mind right now. So yeah, there's a lot on the books for 2025, and I'm going to be sharing it with y'all. I'm really excited about that. I'm thankful for y'all. I hope everyone has an amazing year, and be on the lookout for some awesome new content coming soon.